Determining location is a big deal. The first question is, do we rent or buy? So determining location is a big deal because this kind of self-reliant lifestyle, this homestead living, can't be done in a fifth floor condominium. I mean, you can do a lot of things. You could, get rid of your pets and put in a couple of chickens, and eat your kitchen scraps. Yes, in your condominium, but if you're wanting to go out into the country and you're wanting to start this kind of a homestead, farmstead lifestyle, the first question is, do we rent or buy? How do we actually manage that transition? So we've got our nest egg and we have our expectations met. We know we're going to live frugally. Now, do we take that nest egg and do we buy land or do we rent? My advice is always decide where you want to go first. I think the rent or buy question is moot until you decide where you want to go. The tendency is to assume, well, the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. All my problems would be over if I could just be over there somewhere, or over there somewhere. You need to be strategic, just as you've been strategic about looking at your vulnerabilities of the system and deciding we want to make a change. You need to be just as strategic about where we're going to go. So I suggest you don't buy anything. Don't buy anything first. Go and rent for a while. But here's a checklist for where you want to go. First of all, I think you need to look at your resource, your human resource base. I always tell people, go where you want to go. Go where you feel like you'll fit in, where you'll feel comfortable. And often that includes family, friends, acquaintances, because at the end of the day, remember, I'm building a case here in our conversation about the value of relationships. Ultimately, relationships, people are going to be your greatest equity. So think about where you have family, where you have friends, where you have acquaintances that can surround you during this time of upheaval in your life. You're going to move, you might change jobs, you're going to change lifestyle, you're going to change all sorts of things. And so having some continuity of good old friends or family or good old acquaintances that can be stable through this time of upheaval is good. So think about where you have that equity. Where do you have people equity? Secondly, I think you need to think about where marketing is, where are marketing opportunities. See, here's the problem. Homesteaders, farmstead newbies tend to want to get away. And so our pendulum, we're so tired of the city or being out of control or whatever, that our pendulum swings too far this way. I mean, in my view, this is a little bit of what's happened in Missouri. Missouri, so many people 20 years ago fled to Missouri that now it is just overrun with homesteaders. And that's fine, except that there's no market. Because everybody's canning food, everybody's got a cow, everybody's doing these things. And so I always tell people it would be a lot better to have a 10-acre place 20 minutes from an urban center than it is to have a 500-acre place 200 miles from a Coke machine. And I mean, I'm not going to the Coke machine, but you get the idea. If you're that far away from civilization, marketing, selling anything that you do, selling a craft, selling an event, selling a T-bone steak, an egg, whatever it is, selling things is going to be very difficult the farther you are away from market opportunities. So even though land may be a little more expensive, near a city. And when I say a city, I mean anything over, say, 25,000. All right, 25,000 person city. That's not a big city, but that gives you enough, mass. There's economic activity going on. There's white collar, blue collar, eclecticism in a city of that size. Ideally, it'd be more like 50 or 75, maybe even 100,000 person cities. But as you move closer to the city, of course, the land is going to increase in value. But with markets, you have way more opportunity to local sell and to collaborate with other, with farmers markets, with things like that. Just the proximity to markets and the proximity to things that you need, whether it's cold storage, whether it's, equipment, small engine repair, all those kinds of things. Those are going to be more accessible to you. If you have to drive, an hour every time you need something, that gas bill is going to run you into the poorhouse pretty quickly, and it's going to burn up all your time. Another big thing you want to consider is just how far is your running. Part of the success and part of the allure of homesteading and farmsteading is we don't have to spend all those hours in town. We don't have the commute. But if you're so far out that every time you need anything, it's a 3-hour round trip, then suddenly you've just traded the city commute for the rural commute. Well, if you wanted to stay in your car, why not be where you can also get, Papa John's pizza delivered? You see what I'm saying? So think about your proximity to not only markets for income, but your resource base for things that you might need on the homestead. Now, once you kind of decide on a place, all right, for those considerations, you need to think about geographical and site considerations as well. Remember, you can't do everything everywhere. You're not going to grow banana trees in North Dakota. Your kind of homestead is going to be very different. The things that you can grow, the things that you can do are going to be very different in North Dakota than they are, for example, in Tallahassee, Florida. And so think about dry, think about wet, weather anomalies from tornadoes, hurricanes, those kinds of things. They're hard places. In farming, we talk about hard land and easy land. And that is not just terrain, how steep or how gentle is it, but it's also about weather. Is it a desert? Do you have to irrigate everything? Is the elevation so high that you can't grow things? I mean, I talked to a guy recently in Wyoming, and in his area, in his particular little locale there, he's so high, there is no frost-free date in the entire year. That means if you're going to grow tomatoes or peppers, you can't grow those. You can't just put them out in the yard, in the garden. I mean, they're going to have to be covered in a hoop house, that sort of thing. So you need to be thinking about your geographic and your site considerations like this. What do you want to fight? What battles do you want to fight? Look, if you're familiar with irrigation and all your family and friends are in the desert and there's a lot of knowledge surrounding you about desert production, then go to the desert. But goodness, if you grew up in New Jersey, I would encourage you not to move your homestead to Nevada, okay? It's going to be so different, and just in your own psyche, it's going to be different. And so think about dryness, wetness, weather anomalies, how far are you from coast, rivers, and then think about pond sites. The fact is, every single place can have a productive, happy, healthy homestead. The more I travel around the world, I'm never more amazed at the amount of variety of locations that people make work. But I'm also always amazed at the number of newbies that jump into this, into an unnecessarily difficult climate, a difficult situation, and because they bought the land or they invested in this, then they spend the rest of their lifetime trying to make it work, and it just it just beats you down. In America right now, the average turnaround cycle for buying a homestead in America is roughly 5 years. We've seen it around our area, and I'm talking about places that are, 5 to 15 acres. So people come out of the city, they buy their little place, and in 5 years they sell it. Why? First 2 years is honeymoon. Third year, oh man, I'm not sure I can take care of all this. Fourth and fifth years, it's for sale. And we've watched some properties actually sell 6 times in 15 years here near us that are these small properties. So that's why you want to be thinking strategically about renting rather than buying, and then thinking about where you want to be with pond sites. You want some trees. You want to fight the weather anomalies. Those kinds of things you need to think about. Make your list. Make your laundry list and check off your bullet points. What do you want to see? What do you don't want to see? What are you familiar with? What are you unfamiliar with? And minimize the strategic difficulties that you'll encounter, because you're going to encounter plenty. So you just want to minimize the catastrophic ones by choosing a location that'll be conducive to your assets and your opportunities. So what have we learned in this lesson? We've learned that you don't want to rent or buy something, run out and assume that everything is fine on the other side of the fence. What we know is that your greatest asset is your relationships, someplace you are familiar with, someplace that you know. And so leverage that, think about markets, think about climate, think about opportunity and possibility in that area as you make those decisions.